Now I can see the chat. I can look in the chat too. I'll let you.
Yeah, if you like, you probably can see the participants too. People are entering from the waiting room right now.
I don't see the chat, believe it or not.
Oh,
Kevin.
Yeah, we have other things to focus on, so I'll manage the chat. You don't have to worry about that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. If you're here for the Book Club of California's live online program on women, typography, and book design, you are in the right place. We're going to be getting started in just a minute or so. We have participants entering from the waiting room right now, so we appreciate your patience. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. If you're here for the Book Club of California's live online program on women, typography, and book design, you are in the right place. We have participants still coming in from the waiting room right now, and it's just 2 minutes after 5 o'clock. We will be getting started in a minute or so. So sit down, relax, and we'll be right back with you to start. Thanks. Okay, now it's about a little after 3 minutes after the top of the hour, and participants can join us in progress. So I think we're going to get started. How does that sound? Great.
I'll make sure I end on. I'll end on time. Don't worry.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Book Club of California's live online program, Fore-Edge, Virtuosos of Typography and Book Design. It's a live online presentation by Gloria Kondrup. My name is Kevin Kosick, and I'm the Executive Director of the Book Club of California, and it's my pleasure to welcome you and host this webinar. Tonight, we have more than 275 people registered for this presentation. So for those of you who are new to us, the Book Club of California is a nonprofit, member and donor supported organization dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes, we do that with a focus on the literature and history of California and the West. The book club publishes limited edition books, a scholarly journal, and keepsakes. We host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one this evening on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, history, and much, much more. If you're not a member, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, please consider joining our century-long tradition. Our membership dues are modest and the benefits are many. We simply cannot do the work that we do without the support of our members. I encourage you to visit our website at bccbooks.org to join or donate to the book club. And now for tonight's program and our presenter. Fore-Edge, Louise Fili and Lorraine Wild, Virtuosos of Typography and Book Design, presented by Gloria Kondrup. Gloria Kondrup received her bachelor's degree in fine art and her master's degree in design. She is currently the executive director of the Hofmitz-Milken Center for Typography. As a full-time professor at Art Center College of Design, she has been a dedicated design educator for over 2 decades. As the director of Archetype Press, Art Center's unique and vibrant letterpress studio, she redefines the value of typography and analog technology in a digital landscape. And as the design consultant to national and international firms, she has helped evolve extensive branding, identity, and packaging systems for companies like Avon, and Goodwill Industries. Her fine print art print works and books are in private and public collections, including the American Institute of Graphic Arts, the Getty, the Sackner Archive of Concrete and Visual Poetry. With a brief nod to American women book cover designers from the 1890s through the 1930s, who created thousands of book cover designs and were influenced by the aesthetics of Art Nouveau and the arts and crafts movement, Fore-Edge, Virtuosos of Typography and Book Design, our program this evening will focus on the work of two of the most prolific contemporary typographers and book designers, Louise Fili and Lorraine Wild. Louise Fili was art director of Pantheon Books for 11 years, where she designed close to 2,000 book jackets. She
Wait,
founded
you're taking
Louise
away my
Fili
speech.
Ltd. In 1989. I don't go into it all. I don't talk about everything that all the titles. I'll leave all the titles for you because you're going to show us some great images of them.
Sorry.
But she founded Louise Fili Ltd. In 1989. Lorraine Wild is the principal of Green Dragon Office, a design firm that is dedicated mostly to the design of books on art, photography, architecture, and other cultural subjects. Those are two incredible individuals that you're going to be hearing more about tonight. If you have questions for our presenter, please use the chat and the Q&A function in Zoom. We should have time at the end of the hour to take questions, and we'll curate those questions from the Q&A in the chat. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Gloria Kondrup and pass over the controls for tonight's webinar. Gloria, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And if something goes wrong, I'm sure Kevin will say something to me, and hopefully you can hear me. Everything should be fine. Thank you for coming. I'm not used to this role. I am used to being the host, so I will try to be as efficient as I can. I have a disclaimer first about the title. I'm sure some of you are looking for another title, but I really must explain the change. Traditionally, typography and book design are fields that have been, you might say, dominated by men, or at the least, most of the credit has gone to male designers. This talk was originally called Gender Neutral, as a focus is on the work of designers who were or are recognized as being at the forefront of the field, who happen to be women, calling attention to their strong catalogs of work in honor of Women's History Month. There was never any underlying intention of singling out trans women. The focus is on two contemporary figures who happen to be some of the most outstanding and prolific currently working in the field. Far from distinguishing roles according to people's gender, the aim of the talk is to spotlight the success that these women enjoy regardless of their gender. Now, in order not to marginalize or disrespect any group, however, unintentionally, I have respectfully changed the title of the talk to Fore-Edge. So, I want to talk about two of the most prolific and talented book designers today, who also happen to be women. They each approach their craft and professions from very different perspectives, but both with intent, design intelligence, and a deep understanding of the historical influences in their work. Let's see, it is not changing. Let's see. Now it's changing. So I got it. I want to start out with a little historical reference to early American women book cover designers. In the late 90s, and I'm sure many of you might know this, I'm always afraid to talk to a book club of California audience because I think half of you know more of the history than I do. In the late 19th century, book design in America was evolving. Single color stamp covers embossed in gold, silver, occasionally, and it gave way to more colorful designs reflecting the aesthetics of the Art Nouveau and arts and crafts movements. The careers of Sarah Whitman, Alice Morse, and Margaret Armstrong exemplifies the rapidly changing role of women in culture and art in the late 19th century. In a competitive environment when art and design were among the few occupations open to women. During the late 19th to early 20th century, women designers were trained in applied skills that would become a means to further their participation in a commercial environment and create an income independent of men. So Sarah Weinmann Whitman, 1842 to 1904, her years, was one of the earliest and best artist designers working on book covers during the last decades of the 19th century. Her home was a salon for writers and artists. This is in Boston. And in addition to her career as a book designer, she was a successful painter and stained glass artist. She forged a new approach to book design covers in the late 1880s, using simple but elegant forms, carefully chosen cloths, distinctive lettering styles. She was responsible for a significant number of Haught and Mifflin covers through the 1880s and 1890s. Quite a few of the books that she designed the covers for were written by close personal friends. Sarah Whitman also inspired many young women to enter the field of book design. And you can see her designs are using what was considered conventional Art Nouveau arts and crafts type. But again, the restrained use of color was the beginning of showing a change in the design of the book cover by women. What's also interesting, if you notice, and I'll use my little thing, you can start to see women identifying themselves through their monograms and giving themselves credit for the design work that they did on the covers. Alice Cordelia Morse, this is her work, and my study fire, I don't know if it's on the left or left for you, I get left for me, is actually a sketch of the final cover that you see in the middle. She studied drawing at the Women's Art School of Cooper Union, and women who graduated, if you were not married, you were able to be placed in local businesses, such as Tiffany and Company. So Alice was actually hired as a stained glass window designer at Tiffany Studios. And she saw the book as something very similar to stained glass. It was a very focused environment where you can create these wonderful designs. So you can see the similarity of, and how easy it was for her to go from stained glass design into book cover design. She also definitely incorporates a lot of the characteristics of the arts and crafts movement, Art Nouveau, Rococo, classical periods, and even some Eastern influences. In fact, she was well-versed and well-studied in her understanding of earlier histories of design. You can see she combines curves of Rococo and with the symmetry and organic feel of Art Nouveau. And again, she was commissioned by prominent publishers of the time to do a lot of work. She left, I think, a lot of her work. She left her work to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. 60 plus of her works can be found. And until 1997, they were unattainable, unfortunately. It was very difficult to find good images of Alice Cordelia Morse's work. Very difficult to find them. Margaret Armstrong was probably the most prolific of early book designers, book cover designers. After Sarah Whitman, she was probably the most influential, and she was extremely prolific. I think she designed maybe close to 250 covers. She developed her own lettering and used cloths that were generally lighter in color than most commonly used. I love finds the way. She was also interested in gathering a lot of motifs from nature. She was, you might say, she was an amateur naturalist at heart. She rendered her work in bold colored inks. She experimented with gold stamping, sometimes using shiny and matte together. She also tried to use a little bit more contemporary typography of the time, a little more of the block letters, the beginning of what we might say non-nouveau, more Roman classic types on her books. So departing from what was used before in the arts and crafts movement, she moved ahead. And again, her bold colors was something that was stepping away from what was used before. What was interesting about her covers, they were seen at a distance. And I think that's one of the reasons that she got so many commissions, was she was able to understand the art of the book cover could be seen and used as a selling device. And obviously publishers thought the same, hence she received so many commissions. The other group that was very influential at the time was called, this is more of her work. You can start to see Margaret Armstrong's work become far more austere in what we might consider modern. I love The Millionaire's Household. I mean, I can only imagine the content of that book. You know, what is in a millionaire's household? Unfortunately, I only have the book covers. I didn't have the access to the inside of the content of the books. Most of the work, again, Margaret was friends with a lot of the authors. So there was a lot of back and forth going between the design of the cover based upon the content of the book. Decorative Designers, a very interesting group, firm 1895 to about 1930s, early 30s, employed a number of designers, including the founder, Henry Thayer, his wife, Emma Thayer. But they employed a lot of artists, and because there were a lot of artists, there was very little credit given to who designed the covers. Very distinctive, though, in their work was the use of green and gold. It was one of the signatures of the decorative designers. Again, a lot of these, a lot of this does not display a cohesive style. Sometimes it's more organic, like Margaret Armstrong. In other cases, book to covers, their book covers were far more geometric. And again, it has to do with because they had several designers working on it. Not only women, again, they weren't identified. By the late 1890s, handmade book covers had reached their popularity. But by the first decade of the 20th century, publishers began to look to less expensive means of attracting book buyers. Gold stamped cloth covers were replaced with or rejected in favor, of course, of illustrative ones printed on paper that seemed more modern and economical. So this is a very short-lived period of book cover design in terms of a decorative period. But it really was a great venue for women in terms of their ability to enter into the commercial realm. Now, I'm going to quickly go forward 100 years. I think it's important to start historically because a lot of the work, especially of Louise Fili, is steeped in a lot of historical reference. Louise is a lover of type, a lover of letter forms and travel, in particular to Italy and France. She is also a lover and preserver of typographic histories. that include Victorian art, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, futurist, modernist typography. Quoting her husband, Stephen Heller, one of the most renowned author and design historians, Louise's designs build upon things passé to enliven her contemporary graphic statements, even when the results have, vintage resonance. Although her talent and the career of Louise extends far beyond books and book covers, she professes that all the skills she's developed in book publishing became the basis for her later forays into restaurant and food identity and food packaging design. I would say that we can look at Louise's career and her book career in these categories. The work that she did for Pantheon in terms of book covers, the work that she's done in typography and design in relationship to books, her books on typographic histories, and her books that she authored herself or with her husband, Stephen. So let's first talk about Pantheon. Thank you, Kevin. Louise, yes, she designed over 2,000 book covers, not only for Pantheon, but for other publishers. And it all began with this one book, The Lover, Margaret Duras' book on The Lover. Very interesting. At this time, books in the 1970s, 1980s were dominated by jackets that were, I have to say this, the typography was acceptable, it was big, it was loud. All of a sudden she said, oh, I can experiment with custom type from different historical periods. So her designs became intimate, alluring, instant recognition, as if they had their own story to tell. And as Louise said, she became typecast as the interpreter of sensitive, we might say incomprehensible foreign fiction. And so Pantheon said to Louise, go ahead. And Louise had a playground. So this is where she began to experiment with custom type, historical periods, always seeking the most appropriate for subject of the book. What's really interesting, and I'm not going to show you 2,000 of her book covers, but you can see every single book cover or book jacket that she did was specific to the content of the book. Every single type that she created was type specific, custom specific. And because this was an area, a genre that wasn't, that you might say at the time noticeable or important to Pantheon, she was able to do what she wanted to do in terms of experimentation. And you can see the results of her work was so vivid and so varied and so customed. It was something that was almost unheard of in publishing, that other publishers came to her and said, well, can you do the same for us? So she created a whole genre, a whole field of book cover design in the 1980s that had radically changed how books were viewed, how book cover and book design was viewed. It also allowed Louise to develop quite a, I can't say huge income, but enough income so she can establish her own studio. I think her popularity helped her grow as a designer and also grow into what she wanted to do. So these are additional books outside of Pantheon that she worked on. And again, every single design was custom to every single title, which was almost unheard of. This is a great story. So of course, Louise became so well known for her commitment to history. Louise researched everything. every single title, it came from her research of historical type, of wood type, of metal type. This is a series that she did for the country of Italy, going back to Italy again. These are the 10 most popular, actually required reading of Italian novels. And she was hired by Italy to design them specifically individually for each title. The only one I can recognize is The Adventures of Pinocchio. So she researched historical wood type, historical metal type, and each title had its own custom design. What was interesting, so this was presented by the president of Rizzoli to the president of Italy, commemorating the 150th year of Italian unification. I don't know how you can go beyond this. I mean, this to me is an incredible body of work, even beyond the 2000 she's done for Pantheon. So Louise, because of her love of type, her love of history, and her love of travel, was hired to develop these wonderful, incredible books on bistros and restaurants in London, in Paris, in Buenos Aires, in Sonoma, in Marrakesh. They're fabulous travel guides to eating, shops and restaurants in London, Paris. And they, again, they kind of brought to the forefront the individuality of each, not just the city, but also the food. Her second area of book design would be typography, books on typography and design. And probably one of her most well-known that she did with her husband, Stephen, is this collaboration they started in 1989. Chronicle published a series of 8 books on Art Deco design and typography that resulted from years of Louise and Stephen combing through flea markets, archives, and private collections to historically document all of the deco types. So it's available, still available in this, it's called, they put them all in one collection of Euro Deco. It's a fabulous, fabulous collection of deco type from Italy, France, London, United States, you know, Dutch modern design, Germany. It's a great resource for those who are interested in typography and those who are designers. Now, this ensued then to a whole series of books to collaborate that addressed all manners of typography, celebrating all different types of typography from scripts. And again, it's through Stephen and Louise's, I think, determination to historically document and celebrate these different modes of typography, from scripts to shadow type. It's very interesting. I mean, again, you can see the historical references to stencil types, slab typefaces. I mean, they're just absolutely invaluable references if you are number one, just a typophile, but also if you're in the design community. And to think that they were, you know, painstakingly put together. The other area that Louise, I think, has really excelled in terms of book design and her love is to document what I would say is vanishing language and vanishing type. These are books that she authored herself, that she, on her travels, she said, you know, it's so important to document languages that appear in our environment. Now, most people would just walk by this and not even know they existed. But she did this for Paris. She did this for Italy. And it's amazing that all of this is valuable and noticeable to Louise. And to perhaps other people it's not. But I think she's done a great service to document how letter forms and type historically had been used in our environments. And she did the same for Barcelona. I'll let you look at this. Most of the types that you see, and I'm just going to go back a little, and what's really interesting is in a lot of her work, because she uses historical reference, these are typefaces that do not exist in our digital environment. And that is what's so valuable. They never made it to digital environments, or they were hand created specifically for whether it's a pharmacy or it was for a restaurant. So there's sort of a maintaining cultural artifacts that Louise has, and Stephen, but Louise has been able to, I think, give to us a gift. That hadn't she done this, these will disappear eventually. And then you can see, I think this is Louise's monograph. She did a book on Elegantissima. This is what she called it, the design and typography of Louise Fili. So you can really learn about Louise through this monograph. It doesn't bring us to currently everything, but I love this because, of course, it's called Elegantissima. It has to be Italian. And Louise will say that she's never forgiven her parents for leaving Italy and coming to America, because she definitely loves Italy. She loves France. Those are the two, but definitely Italy. And she's never forgiven her parents. So, or she says that it was their bad judgment to come to America. Now I'm going to move into Lorraine Wild. Lorraine and Louise are contemporary, but you'll see that they have very different approaches to book design, and their references are very different in terms of how they approach their visual narratives in their book design and what their intentions are. Lorraine, I wanted to show you this because this is Lorraine's portrait of herself. This is the portrait I chose, but then Lorraine contacted me and said, this is how she views herself. She views herself as image, as books, as research, and as text. So I said, okay, I'll use your portrait. So she believes there are ways of designing perfectly competent, even beautiful books where the visual design relates to the subject, maybe only tenuously. She really believes that kind of book design is driven by the tradition of books, as we've seen in early book cover design. But she was never interested, or even, she says, knowledgeable about the traditions or conventions of fine printing. She feels her modernist upbringing made her much more interested in extremes of both art and industry. She also designs books that she thinks are worth the work. And she also accepts the restrictions of the marketplace, so books can be accessible to the public. She's always interested in good typography and good printing, but she really feels that what constitutes good book design is always in flux. Now, Lorraine, her reference or her influences from history really come from modernism. And she's been inspired by the work of women modernists such as Eileen Gray, who was a modernist practitioner in the 20s and 30s. Barbara Stoffaker-Solomon, who really brought Swiss design to the United States. And of course, the work of Ray Ames, both Ray and Charles Ames, but I chose to show only Ray Ames here. So these are her influences, where Louise really dives deep into history about books and typography and letter forms all the way back through Victorian era. Lorraine really has been most interested in the development of books and typography from modernism. Now, she really believes you have to be interested in culture to design for it. Lorraine is the designer of nearly 200 notable books and exhibition catalogs on art, architecture, art, photography, and other cultural topics. And she gravitated to books because she felt they were the least ephemeral of design projects. And to her, books capture times. So let's start with her artist exhibitions and monographs. In the artist or architect's monographs, even though she's the designer, she sympathizes with them. She tries to make clear that her design agendas for her projects cannot be different from those of the artists. She's there to translate their ideas into print and to make sure that it comes through the work. First and foremost, Lorraine will tell you that she collaborates. She collaborates with several designers over several decades, and she will say she doesn't do anything by herself. She is not the sole author of her designs. She's, for instance, over the 10 years she's been working with Xiaoqing Wang on the design of books. As you can see, Lorraine understands that the voice of the artist must be supported by her typography book, by her choices, by her typography. Her choices for her images, how the image and text talk to each other, are all based on what will support the work of the artist the best. Again, some other examples of the work that she does for artists and artist monographs. She believes that you should be joined at the hip, philosophy and aesthetically, when you work with artists and cultural institutions. She does a lot of work with architecture and design. Now, most of the work that Lorraine does, she does work for most of the major museums in this country. And as you can see, she does an incredible balance between her imagery, her text. Her type, I have to say, is flawless. And I know there are a lot of designers out there who are probably going to argue this with me. But if you look at the type on her page, the type on her page is in harmony with her imagery, with the voice of the art, whether it's, the birth of the cool, her choice of colors, her choice of how imagery and text talk to each other, what she chooses to use in coloration are always so appropriate for her subject matter. She will say that, she's not comfortable taking credit for solely doing this by herself. But I think we really have to understand that she is the thread by which these projects are sewn together, whether she works on them by herself, or she works with architects, or she works with artists, and she works with other designers. But I think she's an extraordinary designer who is very generous with the other designers and artists and architects that she works with. She is also a lover of Los Angeles. Again, remember, she only does work that she thinks is worth doing. And I know that she loves Los Angeles, and she's able to combine her love of modernism with Los Angeles in terms of, her book design. She was born in Detroit, so she still has a lot of homage towards Detroit. But again, she uses photography and her work with a photographer to create wonderful, incredible monographs about Detroit. I don't know anyone who can make Hollywood Boulevard from 1969 to 1972 look this elegant. Even though she uses a brash gold typography with brash hot pink paper, somehow she's able to turn Hollywood Boulevard into quite an elegant book. Contrasting the black and white photography with the pink. Isn't that the pink of Angeline, Very interesting. I always think of pink and gold as extremely brash, but when Lorraine puts it together, she definitely brings out the elegance of any project. Also Detroit. She really, really, really likes to show, I believe truth in her books. So a lot of her books are not what we expect to see. Books about Detroit, not necessarily about urban Detroit, but about rural or more cultural aspects of Detroit that we're not used to seeing. But again, her positioning of the type, her choices of type and image are so beautifully crafted. Lorraine is so much wedded to the form of the book, formally to the form of the book. And she admits she really, really admires and believes that it's important to use form and the structure of a book to create what she believes are accessible books. Again, her organization of information with this large quantities, her pacing, her design pacing is so incredibly dynamic that we can have dense pages of lots of type and images and these beautiful landscape pictures of type along with visual imagery. Her sequencing through a book is very purposefully designed. She also does a huge amount of collections and exhibitions for museums and private collections. What I also want to show is Lorraine understands the importance of quietness sometimes, that the white space is just as important as the typographic space. The white space is just as important to the image in a book. And this, I believe, this Byzantine Things in the World is a great example of the restraint a designer needs sometimes in terms of creating an interesting book. Space is just as important to Lorraine as type and image. But what happens when you have a lot of dense space or dense imagery or lots of stuff in a book? Lorraine knows how to create and maintain the balance of the type to the space to density. For those of you who know type, you'll understand that and I'm going to bring my little thing, my little cursor here. This is an incredibly crafted, beautiful, beautiful page of type. There is not one flaw in it. And that's what makes Lorraine also one of the most accomplished book designers, that we don't even notice how perfect her typography is. Now I'm going to end on this very interesting, I'm not going to end on this one. She also uses color in a restrained way. Color is used to help us understand depth on a page, or color is used very specifically for an accent on a page, especially when there's a lot of objects in her books. Sometimes her books, especially for collections or exhibitions, are packed with objects and packed with information. How do we use color in a restrained manner to support her objects in her book, to support our understanding of what we need to read, what information we need to get out of these books? This is the one book that, for those of you who are bookophiles, The World from Here, Treasures of the Great Libraries of Los Angeles. And I'm telling you, if you don't have this book, try to find this book. It is one, I think, of the most beautifully designed books that talks about the book, that talks about what are in our, what items are in our libraries here in Los Angeles. Lorraine was asked to do this for LACMA. It is I believe it was LACMA. Yes, it was. It is one of the most comprehensive books ever done about the collections of the libraries, with beautiful imagery and a beautiful design. You can even see how she kind of gave the shadow of what was on the page before to the page after. Lorraine, I just think this is, again, you and your team, I think this is one of my favorite books, The World from Here. So I basically want to thank Louise and Lorraine. Your extraordinary work has transcended the label of designed by women. Thank you.
I'm back. That was so incredible. I have 6 pages of notes here. And
I could go back to any image you want to. I'm sure I left out a whole ton of things about everyone. You know, it's so hard when you talk about the work of your contemporaries. Each one of these women deserves a complete monograph presentation of their work. I hope you understand, I love them both. They both contrast each other so beautifully, and they're both so relevant to the world of typography and design and history and books. I hope I didn't go too fast. People will tell me if I did. I don't have the chat, so you can read the chat.
That was brisk. That was great. It kept moving the whole time. That's why I had to scribble down all my 6 pages of notes. And I will say, before we get to some of the chat questions and the comments in the Q&A, that was so incredibly interesting. And again, we debriefed, and I already saw some of these images, but it was still so interesting to see it again and hear you talk about the individuals, people, and work itself, and kind of the inspiration behind some of it. And I love that these incredibly talented women are getting the spotlight and the attention that they deserve.
They get a lot of attention. I just didn't think the Book Club of California knew who they were.
Not for a book club audience necessarily. So this is great to share these incredible artisans with us, and such a gorgeous presentation that you put together. I think the designer in you is showing there.
Well, I had to. I know there are designers out there. I know I had to do something that, you know, if I didn't have good typography and design, I'm in trouble. That's for sure. So ask away. Go ahead, ask questions.
It was great. So first, you know both of the subjects for tonight, Louise and Lorraine. You know them personally.
Briefly. I don't know them. I know Louise a little bit better than Lorraine, but I know them like everyone else through their work. You know, I have conversations with them, but I'm not intimate with them. We've never worked together.
Oh, that was the question that I was getting at. Have you worked with them, collaborated on something with either of them?
Both have spoken for me. Both designers. I think I'm a closet admirer. Now they know I'm out of the closet. I'm one of these admirers, you know. I'm definitely an admirer of their work, but it's almost I become like a child around them. Like, ooh, I really like you, you know, and I think your work is magnificent. No, in all seriousness, I think that they've done a great service for the elevation of design. Commercially, both are very different in their approaches, but they're very similar in their love of what we're doing and the intensity by which they do it. They're all about detail, both of them. You know, there's a great line from the movie Taken, Liam Neeson, you know, this guy from the Stasi, he goes, it's the detail, it's all in the detail. And it is in the detail. So ask some more questions.
So where do you think, or what do you know about where their inspiration comes from for all of the work?
Louise,
you mentioned their determination.
Definitely. Louise is a lover of letters and typography, and she's an historian. She goes to Europe, she finds archives, she goes and she photographs the streets, the type in the streets. She is a lover. That's why I started with Louise, because of her connectivity to Victorian, to Art Nouveau, to Art Deco. She loves the history of letterforms and type and what is still there that we don't know about. Lorraine is a modernist, as I showed you. Her inspiration comes from the incredible talent of modernism and the women who were involved in the beginning of modernism. So they both have a great deal of reference back to history, but different eras and different ways that they use it. That's all.
Yeah, someone just noted in the chat, what a perfect pairing of two people to focus on, because they're so different in their approaches and their legacies and their impact. I love that you. I love that for Louise, you focused on like the celebration and the documentation of type and of what she sees, and that's incredible
and all of
important for us to have.
Yeah, and all of the letter forms you see on her book covers, that's all done by hand. She customizes. She might have a reference to, to a vintage type, but she starts with the hand. And I think she started at Herb Llewellyn. And that's where she understood the importance of understanding the letter form. And Lorraine Wild, got her MFA from Yale. So that's where the modernism, I think, really, gets
comes from.
Yeah.
Well, what I love about Lorraine's work is that it's unlike Louise's, which in a way is instructional, right? Louise is like teaching you and showing these examples and documenting history and looking at this. And Lorraine's,
and she authors her books too.
Yeah. And Lorraine isn't like instructing you, but she's educating you on design and typography and the whole art of book design. So,
well, because there's such a balance. It's the most difficult to work with artists who have a strong voice. You can't be stronger than Ai Weiwei and Barbara Kruger. When you talk about a strong woman artist, Barbara Kruger, is, not in your face, she's through your face. So how do you design a monograph for Barbara Kruger without, you have to understand there's a huge balance that a very good designer, especially a good book designer, you should, they say the best typography is innocuous sometimes. You don't even notice it.
No, yeah, that's like some of the street signs that Louise was documenting. You don't notice.
You walk by it.
Incredible. You walk by it. You take it for granted and you just walk by it, but it is so impactful and artistic and gorgeous.
It's also it's a cultural artifact that we don't realize is still there. It's like the ghosts. She sees the ghosts. Louise sees the ghosts of the years past, of typography past. You could walk around your city today. Everyone can walk around Los Angeles today and look up and see these images that are still there from the 1920s. They still exist, but Louise sees it and documents it and uses it and brings it to our forefront and says, here it is, don't forget it. This is incredible. So easy we forget,
So early book designers were really book cover designers, right? They were really just designing the cover. And that was done just kind of a solo endeavor, right? They would design the book cover and it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong. And then at some point, we started designing the insides of the books and they became this more collaborative process, whether it's
it became much more collaborative.
Team. Yeah, much more collaborative process. That is such an interesting kind of trajectory to look at for book design, book cover design.
Well, you have to say the time when the early, women book cover designers, number one, they were allowed to enter the field. Just think about it. And just remember what I said, that Tiffany's would not let you work in the studio unless you were an unmarried woman.
Yeah.
Married woman means that you did not have the time or the opportunity. The other thing that happened too, there was a huge shift once we started, after World War I, let's look at what's happened, a shift in the economy, a shift in, I hate to say this, war did help women join the economic market. From the Civil War, probably, I hate to say it, left an opening for women to fulfill roles that men used to do, a la book design, book cover design. Same thing after World War I or during World War I. Women started to fulfill roles in business and industry that men used to do.
Yeah, you could do a whole presentation on the history of how women got into book design, where they came from. I love the fact that Alice Cordelia Morse was originally designing in stained glass, and then that became she became a book cover designer. Yeah.
Oh, she saw the same. She saw the the window of the book. To her, a book cover was a window into the interior of the book. Now, of course, Margaret Armstrong, I think, started doing illustrations with her sister, internally inside a book. Don't forget, a lot of these three, women book designers, they were friends with the authors too. It was a different relationship. It wasn't a separate where, you had the publisher and the author, and the author had nothing to do with the cover. Oh, no, they were much more intimately tied at the hip. And I think that's one thing about Louise and Lorraine. They still have the conversation with the subject.
Yeah. Whether
Louise is the author or she's working with an author, or Lorraine, definitely, she has the conversation with her subject, especially if they're still alive.
Yeah. So it's so more collaborative than you would think it would be. Or actually, I didn't really think much about it, but now that I think about it, it has to be collaborative for really to be
don't forget,
effective.
Yeah, it's very collaborative. Now, Louise and Lorraine are independent. That's the other thing. They both chose not to stay in the corporate environment, which is really design was consumed by the corporate environment. Louise and Lorraine are independent, which is amazing too. I think it's a great example when you think about the early book cover designers. They were kind of entrepreneurial. They didn't work, they worked for themselves. In fact, they were like a little competition with each other, the three of them, for the publishers. And they were very entrepreneurial in terms of being, they were hired by the publishers as independents. Louise and Lorraine are not in competition with each other.
Right.
Totally different.
Right.
But
so
it's still interesting that they're independent.
Yeah, that is interesting and great, because I think that's for the best, right? To make it more dynamic and more Fore-Edge, right? They're more likely on the leading edge when they're not restrained by the corporate demand.
Well, Lorraine is still concerned about accessibility, don't forget. The design, the book should be accessible so anyone can pick up the book and understand what they're reading. And Louise is also, I think Louise celebrates what she does. I mean, there's such a joy in Louise's book, in her book design and her packaging. And again, she's more than a book designer, but today it's, it was a talk about book design, California Book Club. Both women, do more than just books, but I wanted to focus on their book design. I think that was very important. So, anyway,
we're at the top of the hour, but there's a couple of other questions I'm going to sneak in here before we wrap up.
You can sneak in.
Someone said we could listen to a whole nother hour of this if you wanted to stay. That was in the chat.
Wait, I haven't even walked around the type center yet. If they really want to see type, I can just take my computer and walk into the archives, by the way. I'm sitting in the typography center if people want to know. And I can just take the computer and go, let's open the drawers of the archives if you really want to see some nice typography work.
So who are some of the upcoming women book designers that we might want to look out for and look into their work?
You know, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I didn't. You know, there
I'm putting
are
you on the
a
spot. You don't.
huge. No, there's a. You know, I know more upcoming. You know, you might say typographers too. I think. See, I knew you were going to put me on the spot. You know, Na Kim is interesting. You know, in terms of a young typographer designer. I'm trying to think of some other people right now. I'm trying to think. Horrible.
Okay, don't.
I would look at, no, I'm gonna, there's some interesting companies that that are involved in book design again. You know, I think that's, I'm having a senior moment because I work with them and they're going to kill me now. But there are a lot of different groups. Thank you. There are a lot of different groups now that are really centered around book design again and the art of the book. It's changed. I mean, everyone will develop their own aesthetic, but I think books are now popular again, books and catalogs and developing them. You know, United Editions, oh God, I'm having a senior moment. I can go over here and get my reference book.
No, we'll move on to another question. There's a very specific question. I put you on the spot again, but this was in regards to Louise. This comment says,
Yes.
Her sense of design is brilliant. She worked with my dear friend Lise Apatow to create the two Italy books. Lise has lived and guided throughout Italy for over 40 years. Can you say anything about, do you know anything about that collaboration?
You know, Louise, I don't know about the collaboration, but I know Louise is about also collaboration. And now what if, which the books on
Italy.
the
She
10,
lived in Italy for over 40 years.
Oh yeah, but the Louise, if she could, would be living in Italy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So she goes to Italy quite often. And when she's in Italy, she definitely works with designers and archivists and collectors. You know, she's very well known in Italy too. So I'm not quite sure, you know, Louise will spend a lot of time with other people to develop her work. She doesn't work in a vacuum. She really relies on the knowledge of contemporaries and people who know more than she does and who can show her, you know, something.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine she has lots of contacts and confidants and collaborators.
I'm just so happy that she didn't.
I mean,
I'm just so happy that she didn't say, no, you can't talk about me. You know, I mean, you know, she could have said, no, I don't want you talking about me. Because I'm always worried that I'm going to say something about either woman that they're going to go, nah, I don't like what she said, you know.
So this is a book club audience, and many others attended tonight. So it wouldn't be a book club presentation if we didn't talk about the collectibility for people who wanted to go out and get some of these books or collect some of their work.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how they would do that? How easy it is to do that? I think you mentioned there is no like catalog raisonné for either of them.
Well, Louise now has her Elegantissima is her catalog raisonné. Most of the, you know, you can go to their websites. They both have websites. You can put it in the chat room. LouiseFili.com and Lorraine is greendragon.com. Lorraine has, if MoMA, LACMA, all the museums have her books, then they're still at Rizzoli, might have Louise's books too. So the publishers might still have some books. I just don't know. I think The World from Here might be out of print. Sorry, guys. My favorite book. So a lot of the museums will carry, of course, all the books designed by Lorraine, but you can go to their websites and you can see and you can purchase. I think you can purchase from Louise's website. I can't get into the chat room, so I can't give you anything.
I put it up there. I put both websites in the chat so people can get it from there. And if I remember, I can even put it in the email that will go out tomorrow to everybody, so they can find their websites as well.
Yeah, and they can be
And
contacted, and I know that you can have accessibility to their work. I mean, certain things will definitely go out of print, you know, absolutely 100%. Other things, you know, they'll still be published, but like all books, as you know, Kevin, they don't last forever. They don't publish them forever.
No, they don't. That's why I think people would be interested in picking some of them up. So if you
I
were
would
looking
definitely.
in the chat, it's greendragonoffice.com and louisefili.com.
I think if you just Google both of them, you can find, it will take you right to their websites.
Yeah.
And certain things might be accessible.
So check it out. And the last question that I have here is if they have other notable works or other things other than books that they've worked on.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was talking about. And I almost put some in here, by the way. I didn't, because there's a book talk, because then I can go off. Lorraine does a lot of work for DOSA, which is an arts cultural organization in Los Angeles. And when you see the work that she does for DOSA, you'll see the influence of CalArts. Lorraine taught at CalArts for a long time. I believe she's head of the design program there too. So she has this, you know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I call it. You know, her sensibility when she does her book design is very different than the other design work that she does too, outside of the book that she does for museums and architects and artists. So you'll see that on her website. And Louise Fili now is known less for her book work than she is for her packaging and restaurant work. Unbelievable amount, but she says it all started with her books. And it's still the same, the custom lettering, the custom typography. So they're both more than books. And it was hard to say, you know, here's everything else they do, because I take up, you know, the time with everything. But if you look at Louise's book, Elegantissima, it will show you the breadth of what she does. And then if you go to Lorraine Wild's website, you can see some other things that she and her firm has done too. Yeah, it's not just books.
Great. Yeah, well, that was a leading question. I knew the answer. I wanted you to share that with everyone else.
Thank you. No, they're both multi-talented, you know. But so if there's any more questions, again, I think
that's the majority of the questions. There's a ton of, this is great, fabulous program, amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Beautiful presentation. Thank you. Wonderful and so inspiring. That's what we like to hear.
Good. Well, I hope people understand who aren't members of the book club. I mean, think of it as you're helping them to expand. I'm a member of the book club because people know, yes, I'm a typographer. I don't design letter forms. But I am one of those designers that Lorraine took exception to that makes fine print books. I used to. I stopped doing that only because it took so much time and effort to do it. The Book Club of California is so valuable. Again, I value the historical importance of the book club. I mean, what you learn in history is so important to how you look at it again today, how you reinterpret it. And I think that's how both Lorraine and Louise look at their subject matter. And for me, the Book Club of California is so interesting because it carries with it an incredible amount of knowledge that, you know, gets fast forwarded. And I think the book club is expanding. I mean, it's not about what we think about traditional book design. You know, you'll see, Kevin, don't worry, I'm going to bring some book design to you. You're going to go, why did we ask Gloria to do this?
Bring it.
But I feel bad for all of the, I have to say, I make a disclaimer for all of who's the up and coming book designers, because I'm having a mental problem here because I know that I've worked with several and now I can't remember one, you know, it's like, you know. I'm dead. I'm dead in the water here. I'm sure I'll get a lot on social media.
If you think of them and you want to send them to me, because people may ask me later, I can share those names. But I do want to thank you for that nice little shout out to the book club there. That was
No,
unplanned.
I'm a member. I'm a member. You know, I didn't do this because, no, I am a member of the California Book Club, the Book Club of California. Definitely. I just want to let everyone know that it's a growing organization, and it's different than one thinks it is. It's, you know, it's a great organization that needs as much support as possible. So my pleasure.
Thank you for that. And I'll just again give everybody our website in case they want to find out more, bccbooks.org. I'll throw it up in the chat before we leave, but we're now almost a little 10 minutes past the hour, so we're going to try to wrap up now. And to do that, I'm going to, of course, thank you, Gloria. This was incredible. We could talk for hours more, and I hope you and I will, at least, and maybe we'll get you back for another presentation on something.
Well, do you know how difficult it was to edit this down?
Yeah, you probably had 4 hours worth of content that you had to shrink into an hour for us, and we appreciate
and what I
that,
forgot to say.
Go ahead.
Things that I forgot to say about each
Oh,
woman. I just have to say, you know, to you and to a few of the people who are still here, you know, those of you who know me, I never look at the work that I do. If you can say that was done by a woman, I used to say, shoot me, because it's just not the way I look at design. I look at the world. I look at the world through very neutral eyes. And so I have to say there's a certain amount of importance I give to, you know, women designers. And I hope one day we don't have to have that separation. You know, we have to, you know, say this is Women's History Month. This is, you know, it's still a struggle. And I am the first to admit it. It's still, it's still not as equal in whatever your struggle is, you know, we're still have a sense of being categorized, which I find, hopefully one day we'll just look at a book and go, isn't this a great looking book? You know, the person who designed this book was extremely talented, you know.
Right.
That's
I think we all want that day.
That's all I want, is this person did a fabulous book design. And that's, you know, that's how we should look at it, but not yet.
Yeah.
That's
the perfect ending. That's the perfect takeaway for everybody. So thank you for that. And thank you for this great presentation. And thank you for everyone who attended this Book Club of California.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. And I'm sure
there's still 80 plus people. There's still 80 plus people here.
Well, I'll tell you, and if anyone wanted to get in touch with me, Kevin, as you know, it's very easy. So if anyone has any further questions or comments, I'm here.
Great. Well, we'll send that out. Yeah, we'll send that out in the email that goes tomorrow. I have a link if they want to learn more about you and your work. We'll send them your way, and people can make connections that way. So that is going out tomorrow, and this presentation is being recorded, so it will be available for book club members at BCC at Home off of our webpage. That's our special members area where we give you access to all the pre-recorded webinars. That's a great reason to join the book club. If you're not a member, you get access to all of these pre-recorded talks that we've had. So
I like the quarterly gifts, actually.
The quarterly and the keepsake and other ephemera that we send out are all terrific as well. So lots of things to look forward to if you're a book club member.
I am humbled by the invitation, Kevin. Thank you. It's been a very humbling experience for me. I'm humbled and pleased that I was able to do this for you. Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful that you did it, and we as an organization are honored to have you. This was terrific.
Thank you.
So I hope everyone will join us for our next online program, which is titled Anthropologist in the Archives, Writing the Life of Marie Potts, which is next Monday, March 29th from 5 to 6:15 p.m. here on Zoom. This is going to be a live online presentation by Terry Castaneda, She's a professor in the Department of Anthropology at California State University in Sacramento. And you can register for this event online at bccbooks.org/programs or using the link in the weekly programs emails that you may be receiving from the book club. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Parting thought, someone said they just got it on eBay, I think, or Amazon. Speaker's favorite, the book to get if you don't already have it, The World from Here. So check it out. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Be well and take care of yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye.
Bye now.